It's been a while since I actually addressed a creationist on this channel, and I think personally it's because with the advent of YouTube and how popular it's been, creationists really don't have a place to spew their bullshit. Because this is the internet, and here on the internet is where stupidity is amplified and put in center stage for the whole world to see. And I don't think you can get away with that shit on the internet. Alas, I think here comes a time where I found a creationist that is so blindly ignorant that I can't help but address a lot of his claims, even though I have touched on many of these claims before. With that out of the way, all I have to say is, come at me, bro.
Guys, Joshua Feuerstein here. You know, the other day I had an atheist tell me that I was an idiot, moronic, and stupid for believing in God, that he created this world, because it took way too much faith to believe in a process like that, while he believed in what he called the science of evolution.
I don't know what kind of atheists you've been talking to, but I will only speak on my own behalf. I don't really care what you believe, to be quite honest. You can be a Christian, you can be a Muslim, you can be every single religion on the face of this earth. I wouldn't give a damn, as long as you keep that belief to yourself. And what I mean by that is, my having to meddle in your belief only happens when you try and shove that belief down my throat. When you seem to think that it is your duty to impose your beliefs on me in any way, shape, or form, when you want me to partake in that bigotry, that ignorance that I think fuels your belief, and if you want me to praise you for that, and if you think that somehow makes you immune from criticism just because you hold this belief, then I will not hesitate to criticize you, and I will not pull my punches.
Well, let's go ahead and let's do this. Dear Mr. Atheist, first of all, let me correct you. Because evolution is not a science, never has, and never will be. Why? Because it cannot fit within the parameters and parentheses of science for one simple reason. It was never observed.
What a load of bullshit. All you have to do is go on Google search and type in observed instances of speciation and look at all the hits you get. Do the same thing on pretty much any biology journal if you want a primary source. You would not believe how much support there is for the theory of evolution. And for you to sit there without any prior background in the field and claim that you can somehow debunk pretty much a large chunk of modern biology just because you are so goddamn enlightened by your fucking belief is, to me, arrogant beyond words. Like, words literally fail me as to how arrogant that sounds.
That's why it's not science. That's why it's called the theory of evolution.
What does that even mean? You do realize that a theory in a scientific context is something completely different from a theory in a colloquial context, right? In science, a theory is pretty much the pinnacle of achievement. It is as far as you can get when it comes to observability. In terms of evidence, that's pretty much as high as you can go. So I really don't understand what you mean when you say it's just a theory.
One man's theory. Now, let me show you how much faith it really takes to believe in evolution. You want me to believe that in some accidental cosmic bank, that out of that was created one cell, and from that one cell that all life springs, every plant, every animal, every single human being, and that somewhere along the way, over years and years, we mysteriously and magically all develop different wills, and we all develop different characteristics and traits, all because we willed it in our... I mean, you really think that everything came from one single cell? How much faith does that take?
Stop. Just fucking stop. Is it really so fucking hard for you creationists to do a little bit of research on your subject matter before you go spewing your bullshit? So, okay, let me just clarify this one more time for the record, because apparently it bears repeating. The origin of the universe, which, by the way, happens to include the Big Bang Theory, is cosmology. The origin of life from non-life is another scientific concept we call abiogenesis. The evolution of the single-celled organism that resulted from abiogenesis to the complex life forms that we understand and know today is evolutionary biology. And finally, because you decided to throw in wills and psyche into the mix, that in and of itself is an entirely separate branch called evolutionary psychology. So, because you're too stupid to separate all of these concepts, you just try and conflate it into one and say, well, evolution doesn't explain all of these things, so therefore it must be false. Well, of course it doesn't explain all of these things. It's not supposed to.
Now, I realize that you say that evolution is in science. And yet, if we go back to science, the one thing that science demands, maybe you've heard of something called the law of thermodynamics, which means that chaos can never produce order.
Oh, because now you're an expert on thermodynamics, in addition to being an expert on biology, cosmology, abiogenesis, and evolutionary psychology. No, please lecture me and my poor layman's brain on the nature of this subject. Actually, I take that back, because I think you're too dumb and retarded to understand sarcasm. So, you might actually try and spew some more shit at me that I don't need to hear. I will spare you all the scientific details because I think I addressed this in another video, but basically, what creationists always forget to mention is that the second law of thermodynamics only applies to closed systems, and the Earth is not a closed system. It receives outside energy, heat, radiation from the sun. So therefore, it kind of throws this whole argument out of the water.
Look at the world that we live in. The sun goes up, the moon comes out, we travel around the sun, we have years, we have days, we have seasons, the tide comes in and out.
Ew, goody. Someone's been watching Bill O'Reilly.
Everything works like a clock. It has order. And yet, you cannot argue that a world that has order came out of an accident because it defies the very logic and laws of science.
What I think is interesting is that the concept that, oh, well, everything's so perfect and in order is pretty much, in my opinion, almost always a universally fundamentalist Christianity thing that only happens in certain parts of first world countries. Like, these are Christians that I think are so fucking spoiled, that have known no hardship, that have seen no terror and no tragedy in their lives, that they will go up and claim that, oh, well, look how perfect and beautiful the world is. Yeah, and all the things that you take advantage of that has been brought as a result of science, look how much hardship there's been on behalf of scientists just to get their theories out into the public and into academia. And who was the one causing them all that trouble? The church, of course.
You see, you think it takes a lot of faith for me to believe in a God that created this world, a God that created order, and yet, what if I were to tell you that somewhere in Oklahoma, a tornado rolls through a junkyard full of a bunch of old cars, and somewhere on the other side of that tornado, out of that junk pile, it magically produces a perfectly red, shiny, working Lamborghini?
Well, I tell you that it is very, very unlikely, but still within the bounds of reality. Now, what is not within the bounds of reality as we know it is a supernatural entity that defies all laws of nature, magically conjuring up a Lamborghini in the middle of a junkyard. That, I think, is many times more improbable.
You would tell me I was nuts. You would tell me that I had lost it. You would probably try to admit me into the psychiatric ward. Why? Because that is absolutely stupid. I mean, how much faith would it really take to believe something as idiotic as that? And yet that's exactly what science believes.
Oh, so now science is bullshit, right? You know, a minute ago you were saying how improbable it was that oh, well, how could it all be formed as a result of disorder? Because it defies the very laws of science as we know it. Use the second law of thermodynamics, which is a scientific concept, to further your argument, and yet when atheists use science to further their arguments, now somehow science is bullshit. Like, stick to a fucking side, man.
Science believes that in this accident came this perfectly working earth with human life and with people and animals and plants and seasons and days and hours and rotates. I mean, the atmosphere, everything in earth was created perfectly.
You know, I don't have a Twitter account, but if I did, I'd totally start a new hashtag and put this guy's picture up with a hashtag that says, like, First World Fundy.
And I'm telling you, that could never happen through an accident. It had to be by intelligent design. So, dear Mr. Atheist, who really has to have a lot of faith today to believe in their theory? I believe in God because I've experienced Him, I've felt Him, but most of all, while driving through Yellowstone and Montana and so many of these natural reserves this week and looking at animals and looking at life, I don't know. I just can't look at all of that creation and say that it was an accident.
Well, if that's what you want to believe, go for it. I don't personally care whether or not I was a result of order or if I was an accident, whatever the fuck that means. I derive purpose in other areas of life, and I don't dwell on the past in that way. I think it's a lot more meaningful to focus on the present and the future rather than just dwelling on the past. But that's just me.
I have to say that creation has a creator. And one final thought. Well, the word universe, you believe in a Big Bang, but when I look at the word universe, it means una, which is one or singular. That's Latin, universe. Verse means a spoken statement. So universe is one single spoken statement.
That is actually not the origin of the word universe, as any search will do, but even if it was, who cares? That doesn't add validity to your argument. That just shows that Latin people, once upon a time, happened to refer to the universe as one verse of something. One verse of what? The Bible? The Torah? The Quran? Some other form of scripture, maybe? I don't know. Do you know? Are you certain that it's referring to the scripture that you hold firmly, that you believe in? No, of course not. You're just twisting the origin of the word just to suit your own ideological needs. And how pathetic that you try and do this without even actually conducting research as to the origin of the word that you say refers to the Bible.
God bless. I dare you, if you believe in God, if you believe that all of this stuff is nonsense and you have enough faith to stand up and say, I still believe in creationism, I still believe in a God that reigns above all, then I ask you to take a moment and click share. Click share below or on the side of this video. And if you're not my friend already on Facebook, click my name at the top of this video and let's be friends. But guys, it's time for us to stand up, get loud, and get proud. Why do we let evolutionary quote unquote science work its way into middle schools and preschools and colleges and universities around the world? That's nonsense. It takes too much faith to believe that junk.
Oh, and of course, it doesn't take any faith to accept the premise that some supreme deity created everything in the universe as we know it and decided to concern itself with the affairs of one measly species on a speck compared to the rest of the universe. And not only that, but he wants us to acknowledge that he created everything, otherwise, you get sent to hell. Oh, great, because that takes no faith at all. For those of you who are not scientifically literate, myself included, I mean, it took just 5 minutes to go on Google to find the direction where I was looking for this information. It takes maybe 15 minutes on any major scientific journal to find what you're looking for, and a couple of minutes just to scroll through some journals and see what work scientists have been doing in the field. And I think with guys like this, it's just a combination of willing ignorance, blind bigotry to anyone who doesn't believe their version of horseshit, and a huge dose of intellectual laziness. Like, they're just too fucking lazy to look on Google, to type in a few words and do a search just to confirm their facts. No, they would rather turn to Bronze Age mythology and their own brand of creation science to inform them on exactly what academia has accomplished within the last 200 years. And you know what? It's getting fucking old. And it's getting extremely condescending to anyone with even the slightest bit of intelligence, and it's quite insulting to the scientists who work so fucking hard just to provide the results that we use in society and the results that we take for granted. Creationists like this asshole are literally pretty much spitting in the hand that feeds them. And I think there is nothing more arrogant and disgusting than that. May the truth always be heard. Peace.